am Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm so excited to be joined by the fantastic Emmy-nominated actor Karen Pittman to talk all about her
Woo!
in the morning show.
That's amazing to hear. Wow. Wow.
And so well deserved as well.
Uh, Thank you, Mara. Good to be here.
I actually wanted to start off by talking a little bit about Mia, kind of going back to the conversations that you had with the writers at the beginning of season one, because I remember that one of the things that they talked to you about was this is the place that she really feels like she's meant to be and the place that she thrives. And I feel like we see that passion and that connection in so many of your scenes throughout the show. And so little tidbits like that they gave you early on, I was really curious how that's continued to create a lot of the development of the character, but also a lot of her actions and choices throughout for you.
Well, it totally informed everything. That Mia loves her job, that she's passionate about it. I Mia does spring from my imagination, but there are some in the imagination of the writers and the directors and the producers and costume designers and all of that. But you know, the emotional arc of her and the trajectory of that arc is created through my work as an actor. And so to know that she loves her job and she's passionate about it, that she considers it her world, as they gave me in season one. In season two, she um, very eloquently asks the staff at the show to be very careful about how they're handling sensitive information because as a news organization, they must be pristine in how they execute the telling of information to the public. I think of Mia as an extraordinarily noble character who tries to um, uphold standards um, at the morning show, and it is at her, sometimes to her detriment. I also consider a soldier of the show that kind of has had this self-inflicted wound of starting this relationship with Mitch Kessler in season one, and um, navigating back through that when Mitch passes, he dies, and then coming into season three where you see her in a love, passionate, sexual sort of situationship with uh, with a photojournalist. And so, yeah, I think the idea of her being a passionate woman who cares about her job and cares about the people she works with has really influenced almost every important choice I've made for the character and continues to influence the work that we've already started to do in season four.
Absolutely. And I feel like it's such an important point that you were talking about as well in terms of she's such a support system for the people around her. And in this season, it was interesting to see how does she respond when that's not necessarily received in the way that she's hoping and intending it. I think especially with like Nicole Bahari's character, it's like this isn't what I'm looking for and this isn't what I need from you. I actually need something different. And so when you were looking at the scripts and kind of seeing this pushback that she starts getting from some of the staff in certain situations, how did you figure out how would Mia respond to this and navigate these moments?
I think it was a sort of a sensitive and interesting question for me as an African American woman. We talk a lot about in our community that kinfolk aren't always skin folk, right? And being African American, you understand that as a culture, we are not a monolith. We see race, we see class, we see elitism, we see all of these things in a very different way. So it was interesting to share with the audience that there were two different perspectives on how race and race politics in the workplace uh, fit differently for Mia than it did for Chris Hunter. I thought that was a nuanced conversation that our writer Joshua Allen had in episode three, and it sparked an extraordinary, interview later on in the season or in the episode. But for me, it's been sort of building on this character of Mia, someone who's quite noble, who really does love her job, and to see how this job affects her character and her integrity over time. And that's something we continue to explore in season four as well.
Yeah, and there's something interesting as well in terms of the facet of on the ground level at the morning show, she is running that show and that ship. But then in terms of the executive level, she talks about feeling like a cog in the wheel. And so
Hmm.
how do you feel like that puts her in a really unique position where, she's kind of switching between these two spaces, one where she's the person, giving information and kind of making sure that they have everything that they need, and the other is managing an entire team and a whole show.
Yeah. Mia is definitely someone who is behind the scenes, more felt than heard, right? More felt than seen. And that's interesting for me because most of the characters that I have had the privilege to embody have been characters who are very much seen. They are very much out front. So try to inhabit Mia's quietude, um, her ability to stay in the background sincerely while all of these, wildly unmanageable, cumbersome egos float about her has been just sort of a lesson in restraint as an actor. This is a person who doesn't show everything that she feels, right? So it's been an interesting experience to do it, and that's been consistent from season one, I think.
What are some of the challenges that come with that restraint that you're talking about? Because I think there's so much nuance in your performance in playing a character who has to keep hold of her emotions. Even in season two, when they were trying to confirm is Mitch Kessler dead or not, which was an
Mm-hmm.
amazing episode, she couldn't give forth into her own feelings, or when she realizes that the spaceship suddenly this season, like that might suddenly be an issue. Again, it's she can never respond in that emotional way, but we always get the sense of what's going on underneath.
Mm-hmm. As an actor, it's very hard. We spend 5 or 6 months out of every we spend it takes about 5 or 6 months to film the show. And the show, in my experience, is not filmed like a TV show. It's filmed like a film. It feels like cinema. And so as an actor, I'm immersive in the work that I do. I don't consider myself method. But it is hard to bring that character home with me. And it's Jennifer talks about this too. You end a season of the morning show and you feel like you need a month-long vacation. It is a lot of hard work. I think part of that is just because the writers are so extraordinary in how they view the characters. But you also are working with a cast, talking about the Olympics, for the last week or so. I mean, they're just at Olympic level. They're just incredible mastery at their work, and actors, but also directors, incredible group of directors, um, and set design and hair and makeup. I mean, it's just everyone is wants to do the best work they've ever done for this show. So it just ups your game. It just makes you feel like you need to do your very best work, and by the time you get to the end of the season, you're exhausted. So as an actor, it, it's um, it's hard, and it's also hard to hold the emotions of a character without letting them out. And in Mia's case, her emotions seep out. They don't sort of go blah. They sort of just slowly you start to understand who she is. Camera helps you a lot. You can do a lot with your eyes or with a look or that sort of work. That sort of you do a lot with the behavior in your body as an actor. I mean, it's a it's a lot, you know. Um, but overall, as an actor and certainly as an African American woman, I hear a lot about how this character represents so much to people who watch the show. It's important to me to explore that thing lying underneath all of us, which is the fragility, the vulnerability of who we are as human beings. And I think that that's part of the thing that helps buoy me through the season as an actor. To keep exploring that in Mia is a lot of it's very satisfying.
Yeah, I think there's a huge aspect in terms of Mia because she holds so much space for other people and has to
Mm-hmm.
really absorb their stress and absorb their tension. And so for you, what are the implications, or how is it that she navigates through the amount of energy that she has to give other people? Because it's always that challenge then, how do you look after yourself if you're looking after everybody around you all the time?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of what it is to be an executive producer for sure on television news. I do a lot of research in that area. I go to my television morning news shows, and I take notes, and I spend way too much time on television morning news anchors' social media. They would be very upset at how obsessed I am with them. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that that's just women, especially women in the workplace. Certainly, women in the workplace, and at its best, the morning show is a lot of fun. It's entertaining to watch. Um, but I think at its highest point, the morning show can actually talk to us, put us in a conversation about what it is to be a woman in the workplace, ambitious, self realizing, self actualizing, and trying to balance and juggle all of the things that it means. Um, obviously a big fan of all of the female actors on the show, but also a very big fan of our showrunner, Charlotte Stout, who came in with a strong imagination and her ingenuity to tell a nuanced story about who these women are.
And you also have Mimi, who's an amazing director on the series as well, and particularly with the style that she brings in. And it's so fascinating to watch so many scenes where there's these walk and talk elements, and Mia will come in, she's halfway through running 10 different things and organizing everything and everyone. And yet at the same time, I feel like there's also a stillness and a calmness whenever we see you on screen in these scenes where everybody else is moving around very frenetically. And I was curious in working with Mimi if you kind of found that relationship with the camera and that relationship with the character very early on.
Yeah, you had to. That is Mimi's signature camera move. She, innovated it in many ways in the television industry. And again, just someone who is at the very, very top of her game. You not only want to meet her where she is, you want to surpass it on behalf of the character because the storytelling is so great. Mimi has been such an important part of my career. I feel very lucky to have her along my journey as an actor because I've learned so much. Um, but I think also this way of filming, the way that she has visually created the morning show has allowed the audience to understand the chaotic, the frenetic, the urgent nature of what television morning news is. Um, and it just sort of brings them into, the quick into pace of what it is to do a live television news show every morning. So it really benefits us, not just actors, but also benefits the audience.
I also wanted to ask about the scenes in the sequence where we see Mia go to bed in her office and then wake up in the morning, because it seems like such a simple thing, and yet it gave us so many touch points and details of how does she start her day, how is she feeling in the morning, and even just the way that we got to see how does she walk into the studio when she's there by herself and nobody's there,
Mm,
and there's
mm,
just this light and this joy of like, yes, we're starting another day of the show.
yeah.
And so how did just a sequence like that is just, going to get coffee, waking up in the morning, actually give you a lot for the character?
Well, I, as an actor, I'm a person who um, likes to inhabit behavior. I like to embody a character. I am one of those actors that's always saying to the writers or to Charlotte, "Hey, can she say less there?" Because I love to see a character, see an actor behaving without words, and so I loved it. I loved that people could peek into her life, and that was part of the goal, I think, for Charlotte, and certainly one that we talked a lot about. Who is Mia behind the scenes? We understood that she works very hard and she's noble in that work, but what is her emotional life like? What is she like when no one is there, when no one is watching? I think the morning show has done this extraordinarily well over the last 3 seasons. The characters are having a conversation with the audience that they don't necessarily have with the other characters on the screen. So you feel like you're in an intimate conversation with the audience all the time, and it's really a gift.
I love those sorts of details, and also in terms of the scenes that you get to share with Greta Lee's character Stella a lot this scene, and in essence the scene where they go out to the bar is so wonderful and such a great insight because we see Mia really unsure about whether she should go. You can kind of see she doesn't usually take that space for herself socially. And then when they're there, they're talking about work, but then they're also sitting there going, oh, Yanko's really problematic, but also, isn't he cute? Is that okay to admit it? And so when you were reading that sort of scene, how did that just really bring to life a little bit more of who she is outside of the morning show for you?
Yeah, it was a season of showing Mia outside of the morning show. And I think also what it really did was show like this budding relationship, friendship between Stella Bach and Mia Jordan, which was a lot of fun to do. Um, I think that there is a couple moments where Mia lets her hair down and we see it. It was great to be able to explore that with not just Greta, but also Clive Standen, where Mia comes in and she peels off one garment after the other. It's just so layered, the way the writers are writing it. It's so layered. It's such a joy to be able to reveal to the audience certain aspects of who the character is after, 2 or 3 seasons. It's really great.
There's also conversations between the two of them later in the season where Stella's considering the proposal to potentially take Corey's job. And it's really interesting to see Mia's reaction because it's not an immediate, that's so great, you should definitely do it. There's almost a hesitation and a little bit of trepidation of like, do you really know what you're getting into? And I was curious for you if you feel like Mia has, if there's certain things that she aspires to even above the position that she's at, which is already accomplishing so much, or if you think there's a wariness that she has had with everything that she's seen at this point.
I think there is a wariness, but I also think underneath Mia is this desire to be more. Um, and I don't know if she necessarily in that moment thinks of it as an opportunity to be seen, but more of an opportunity to deal with more of the craziness and chaos that is UBA at the time. But I do think that in that scene, you see two women supporting each other. Like, we're going to do this together. What do you think about that? And that for me was exciting to see in the writing, and fun to fun to create what that moment might look like for someone like Mia, who for uh, I think for most of the season, and like a lot of African American women, um, Mia is underestimated. She's underutilized. Um, and that was an interesting moment for her to be with someone who actually sees her.
And there's also that interesting tidbit where she talks about looking at people like Corey and the people at the top of UBA. And I think the difference between us and them is that they don't let the people that they've had to step over on the way up haunt them, and we do. And
Mm.
obviously, Mitch Kessler is one of those people. But for you, what are those aspects or those people or those parts of her journey that you think still haunt her a little bit?
I think one of the characters that haunt Mia is definitely Daniel Henderson, Deshaun Carey's character. Um, uh, of course, Mitch Kessler being, absolutely no closure with Mitch Kessler. Also, might think that to some extent her relationship with Chip Black sort of haunts her. In many ways, he was sort of the fool in the series. He was sort of like the clown that was just running behind Mitch Kessler for many many years, and that relationship I think was powerful for a time in her career, and then when he got dismissed from the morning show, she had someone out there that was could very easily take her job or not, or so I think that there are many dead bodies at the morning show, that sort of haunt me. Yeah. But those three probably being the most.
I Yeah, I love those sorts of details. And with Chip as well, it was so interesting to watch the way that the team came together behind him coming in for that interview on the morning show, because they all know the possible outcome and they all know that he's a little bit of a loose cannon at that point. And so do you think Mia was considering the elements of personal risk in doing that, or it was very much just about the driving force of what they were all trying to collectively achieve for her?
I think it was the driving force of what they were trying to collectively achieve, which was to keep UBA from being sucked up by this tech billionaire. You know, that storyline, the hack, that just was the gift that kept giving us as actors to um, shore up a story about who they all were at the network by saving it. Do you know what I mean? Um, and Chip being central to that, I think, was something Mia thought, oh, should I bring him back in here? But definitely, she didn't have a choice at that point at the end of the season.
Yeah. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, in terms of interviews that happened on the show, there was the one that Chris did with Sybil earlier in the season. And we get to see Mia in the control room, and she's the one to be like, we're not going to commercial. She's about to crack, push the camera in closer. And do you think that that interview with Sybil went exactly in the direction that she anticipated and knew it would be from the emails that had leaked?
I mean, I think this is that particular scene was sort of like probably for me the most authentic experience of what morning television news looks like. An interviewer said, you know, that felt more like a three-person scene than a two-person scene because of Mia's emphasis on making sure that that interview went a certain way, and so. I think that's key in television news, knowing where the story is about to go, anticipating what it's going to be. Um, and I thought that the writers got that kind of perfectly. It demonstrates the extraordinary gifts that Chris Hunter had as a journalist, as a reporter, but it also showed the expertise of Mia Jordan as a producer of a television morning news show.
Absolutely. And also, you know, in the conversations that you often have with the writers, and going back to what we were talking about at the beginning of just them giving you these little tidbits and building her, I was curious, you know, going into season 3, and now I know you're filming season 4 currently, what are the ways in which they still give you those little tidbits or give you further bits of information which help you in just continuing to develop and layer her? Because it feels like every season we get so much more richness in who Mia is.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the gifts of having done a character for 3 seasons is that even for 2 seasons is that you know her pretty well. And when I put on Mia's wig and I put on her makeup and her costumes, it really does feel like I'm sitting in the soul of a human that I know very well now. So if they throw something at me, I'm like, yeah, let's try it. Why not? Let's do it. Um, Also having brought in, you know, for 2 seasons we had Carrie Aaron, and now we're on our second season with Charlotte Stout and her writers' rooms, which are very, very different from Carrie's writers' rooms. You're getting used to writers who have what, you know, they're much more interested, not just in the intricacies of who those characters are internally, but how the external um, world affects their inner world, you know, and it's interestingly a deeper dive for Mia Jordan. For me in season 3, I mean, who would have thought that Mia spoke Russian? Like I wasn't thinking that when I came into season 3, to be honest with you, and that she would have a photojournalist boyfriend from Ukraine, you know, who's in Ukraine, you know, I could not have put that together. Likewise, in season 4, there's a lot of things that happen with me already. I've been told what's ahead for her, and I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go. Let's just see how it is. And it's been some of the most gratifying, some of the most satisfying work that I've ever done in my career this season of the morning show so far. Like we're only on week 4 or week 5. I think people are really going to love this season. It's pretty hot. It's pretty banging.
I love that. And also quickly, because you were mentioning the relationship that she has with Andre in this season, I love that we get the touch point of looking at their space in the present, but also going into those flashbacks and, you know, seeing the initial kind of like spark and then downfall that they had and what it is that still brings them together. And with the fact that it feels like he's so much her intellectual equal and someone that can really go toe to toe with her. How do you feel like that gave her someone to kind of like play with and dance with in a really interesting way that she needs, because he stimulates her mentally, but also that the adrenaline thing was ultimately just this breakdown between the two of them?
I think you know, 2 things. One, Clive Standen was so extraordinary in this part. I mean, he just really opened up as an actor and came right in and brought everything that he had in his toolbox. He was just so great to work with, and was the perfect Andre Ford in that character. And secondly, wasn't that all of us in the pandemic? Didn't we all have a situationship that took us down at some point? That episode was written by Xander Lehman, and I just thought it so perfectly, um, created the world of that time. There's a moment in the early part of that episode where Bradley and Mia are walking to the teacup, and they're in close proximity, and Bradley says 6 feet, 6 feet, and just those tiny little things, brought that moment back to us, as on set and as actors and in the audience. And certainly that moment where Mia encounters the question as an executive producer of what to show her audience that is palatable, that they will watch, with regards to the George Floyd murder. And the line that I just so vividly remember is that, she says, I've watched it 20 times. And as a human being, not on the show, I've watched it 0 times. Like, I cannot get through it. So it was really, it was so, provocative, evocative for me to really try to bring it home for what it would be as an African American producer of television news that would have to sit in your room, as in your office, and watch that video and pick out little parts that wouldn't offend people. It's mind blowing, a great story to tell, and the emotional effect on her. So I really think episode 5 is that peek into Mia's emotional life that our audience has been craving, that people have been asking for. And I really hope we did it justice.
I think you absolutely did. And I love, especially in this last season, how we get so many of those different scenes that give us all these different sides and more complexities to who she is as a person. It's always so wonderful watching your performance in the show, and this season was no exception. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mara. Thank you very much for that.